This is WCRN Weekend with your host, Pat Rice.
Welcome to the show, and once again, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Weekends with Pat Rice on AM 830 WCRN. This is the place and time where all voices are heard, different opinions, all different kinds of conversation. We're either on this side or that side, we're on all sides. We're here to voice how we feel about all different kind of subjects, and I hope you enjoy the material. If you ever miss an episode, you can hear our previous episodes on soundcloud.com/Weekends with Pat Rice. You can also follow us on Facebook at Weekends with Pat Rice. Oh, I want to guess that one. If you ever want to reach out to me or mention something about my show, tell me how you like the show, pros and cons, or if you just want to chip in with the conversation, I will read your emails out loud. You can contact me through Facebook at Weekends with Pat Rice, or send me an email at patdrice93@gmail.com. That's patdrice93@gmail.com. And I'll definitely check out what you guys have to say. On today's episode, we're going to discuss a very hot and controversial topic. And believe it or not, this topic that we're going to touch base on has actually already happened in our society before. And it's kind of scary that history is repeating itself in a way. I'm going to talk about supervised injection sites, or also known as legally sanctioned, medically supervised facilities that allow junkies to shoot up freely under a nurse's protection. God forbid you go out and smoke a joint on the sidewalk without being stopped, harassed, and patted down and written a ticket. But we're thinking about establishing supervised injection sites in Massachusetts. Come on. Should we send an invite out to all the drug addicts in the neighborhood? Come on down to 101 Main Street. You can shoot up around the clock 24/7. And don't worry, the nurse has got Narcan and naloxone. You'll be alright. Overdose 5 times in one day. Come one, come all. And hey Jorge, stop on by. You'll make some great business slanging your illegal contraband outside this place. Give me a break. New England, the Commonwealth, the whole world is sick of the drug heroin. We are sick of opiates. We are sick of this killer that is dominating people's lives. It's like people do it once and they get hooked like a dog to a leash. If that leash is tied up to that tree over there, that dog can't go too far. It can either go about 20 feet to the right, 20 feet to the left, but it can't break free. It's forever tied down. That's what it's like when someone's addicted, married to the needle. These supervised injection sites are considered as harm reduction. It's part of the harm reduction system, which is a range of public health policies that offer a safe substitute or environment for reckless and dangerous behavior. Let's be honest. This isn't like, oh, come on down and run a couple miles on the treadmill. This is a gym. No, this is, all right, feel free to get high and possibly kill yourself almost. But if you're about to die, don't worry. We'll protect you and we'll save you. And we'll just have the taxpayers of this state pay for it to keep this joint running. Psh, trust me, the state already takes too much of my money. The government takes too much of my money. Why should I have these addicts suck more money out of my pockets? But either way, if we don't have these facilities, they'll be calling the ambulance 24/7. And guess what? Taxpayers are paying for that too. You telling me there's about 20 overdoses within 24 hours in the city of Worcester? That's insane. Those are record numbers. And I truly feel bad for those that get addicted to this substance. I just don't understand it. People say they went in and had dental surgery, or they had back surgery. They got put on some pain pills, some prescriptions. after the 8 weeks of taking the prescriptions, it runs out. They can't get off of it. They hit up somebody that they know. Hey, Tony, man, I know you just sell weed, but any way you can get your hands on some Oxycontin, maybe some Xanax? Yeah, man, let me look around. I got you. And then before you know it, he's running to the street block every single day just to get his hands on another script. But then the pills get pricey. His bank account's running out of money. He goes back to Tony. Man, Tony, I'm telling you, man, my bank is busted right now. I got a kid on the way. I can't afford to keep on doing this stuff. You got anything cheaper, man? I don't want anything that's too crazy, but I need to get that high. Hey, man, let me think about it. Comes back a couple minutes later or the next day, however it goes. Hey, man, would you be interested in, I know this might sound crazy, some heroin? Listen, it's $5 a pop, man, and you're gonna be high for hours. And boom. The end. But hopefully, that isn't the end for a lot of people. Some people would argue that these supervised injection sites will lead to some kind of help for an addict. An addict will go there, seeking for help by the nurses or doctors, and maybe be convinced to go to rehab. If you ask me, if you have personally ever known a junkie, it takes so much more than that to get a junkie to go to rehab and quit something that they claim that they love. They don't really love it. They sometimes don't even love what it does to them or how it makes them feel. It's just they're physically and mentally addicted, and it has to do with chemistry and all this other stuff. It's messed up. Their soul gets stolen from this substance that's sold by these criminals. They're just trying to make a quick buck and live that Scarface fantasy. They don't care about you. No matter how many times the dealer is like, you're my number one guy, man. You know I love you. You know I always got you. You always picking up for me. I always got the good ish for you. I save it for you all the time. Psh. You could die the next day. He wouldn't give an F. Just as long as no one knew who sold it to him. He's getting out of Dodge. Okay, we gotta take a quick break. But once we get back, I'm going to go over some of the other harm reduction programs, exactly what they are, what they do, go over a little bit of the history about harm reduction programs within our society in different countries, along with the pros and cons of this so-called system and what it would do to your neighborhood. You've been listening to WCRN Weekend with Pat Rice on AM 830. We'll be right back. We are back, and on our last segment, we introduced the topic that we were going to discuss about today, which is supervised injection sites, whether they're good or not, along with the current heroin problem, not just in New England, but in the whole wide world. We covered what exactly a supervised injection site was, along with the harm reduction site, along with how a majority of people get involved with heroin. From it starts with prescription pills, whether they just had surgery or just began abusing prescription pills and somehow went down that road to heroin. In this segment, we're going to discuss about some of the other harm reduction programs that have to do with injection sites or close to it, along with some of the history about injection sites and much more. The harm reduction system has a whole list of programs, not just for heroin. It could be for alcohol, tobacco, amphetamines, to even psychedelics. But one of the programs that they do have that has to do with heroin, or maybe just shooting up any kind of drug, is the Needle Exchange Program, which it's a location that provides a sufficient amount of clean needles for drug addicts, and most of the time, it's not even for sale. So once again, who's paying for it? Taxpayers, the healthcare system. So free of charge, clean needles. Wow. They can have it posted up in the center of town. That is like an addict's dream come true. These organizations claim to prevent hepatitis, though research has been on their side, and it has shown a 33% decrease in hepatitis in New Haven and a 70% decrease in New York City. And that's pretty good. Hepatitis is nothing fun. This type of program reminds me of the system of placing certain special boxes around town, maybe in a library, for people, junkies, to drop off their used needles. And to me, in an educational place like the library, there should be no need to install a wastebasket for druggies' needles. That's not a librarian's job to do that. They don't need to deal with overdose victims. They don't know how to. They know how to look up books alphabetically and put it on the shelves. I mean, unless they're a part-time nurse. But when is it in the job description for a librarian to have to take care of some dude passing out in the bathroom because he shot up some dope? It's not. Allowing that kind of behavior in such a public place is like, why don't you just let the neighborhood pedophile walk around the kids section in the library? Why not? If things get out of hand, just call the cops. But let me tell you a little bit more about the other harm reduction programs, such as the heroin maintenance program, which helps heroin addicts by prescribing a pharmaceutical heroin, and it helps wean the addicts off the drug while lowering healthcare costs, woo, social welfare, woo, and the prison population, woo. That's 3 woos in one. Though many individuals that leave these so-called methadone clinics end up hooked on other drugs, such as Suboxone or even methadone. So now, not only are these ex-heroin addicts used to be addicted to heroin, now they're addicted to these other kind of pills, like Suboxone, that gives you a bit of a high if you're a heroin addict. And this whole drug craze in New England has gotten so bad that a statistic says authorities in Quincy, Massachusetts began to carry a spray form of naloxone in the fall of 2010, and the Quincy police force has used the drug 221 times and have been able to reverse 211 overdoses back in 2010. Sadly, the numbers are probably much higher for 2016, 2017, and 2018. Now, it's part of the job for the everyday police officer or ambulance person, EMS, to have Narcan or naloxone on their person because overdoses are so out of hand. There are several overdoses every single day. I could just easily bet $100 right now that there could be a dozen overdoses in total for New England. It's probably surpasses that if you count every single community within this, to be quite honest, tiny state. But it has a huge problem. And I begin to think, is our society and country way too lenient on drugs? You know, I hear all this talk about having a drug war, the Mexican cartel, build a wall. Let me tell you, that whole drug war nonsense has been one big failure since day one. I mean, going back to the days of when Reagan was president. Complete failure, complete propaganda, and complete BS. It has been a war on the people with drugs, because going back to the harm reduction system, we have organizations for stuff like psychedelics and ecstasy. Can you believe that? Something that will give you cardiac arrest or completely fry your brain? Ecstasy. It's big within the music scene, the rave scene. And the rave scene and the electronica music originated from Europe. It was really big, and along with taking ecstasy, listening to the music, it came to the US, popular in the underground in the 80s. Ecstasy and speed became popular, yada da, you get the picture. And so at these music festivals that they put on every single year, several times a year, whether it's out in the desert or out on the sunny West Coast, California by the ocean, kids are gonna want to take ecstasy. For hip-hop music, pop music nowadays sings about this form of ecstasy called Molly, and it's a big thing with the kids nowadays. So let me tell you, it's so big. Get this. Is this not contradicting or what? These music festivals, we don't want you taking drugs, but then there's PSAs of artists that are participating in these events that are like, but if you do choose to take drugs, be safe and remember to take these precautions. And then You go to the front door or whatever, you're standing in line to get into the show, they pat you down, they have the canine dogs, they're trying not to have drugs enter into the premises, but if you somehow sneak drugs into the premises, there are tents that have lab kits for you to test your drugs to make sure your drugs are safe so there won't be any overdoses. Now, this is the organizers of these events trying to save their tuchus. Because if some poor teenage kid overdoses because he took a bad ecstasy pill, you know what? The parents of that child are going to try to sue and take their butts to court. So, wait a minute. You're telling me I can't do drugs at this event? I can't bring drugs to this event, but yet you have lab kits for, I guess, people to test their drugs at this event? Does that make any sense? And if you believe that these organizers don't think that drugs are at their event, then you, sir, are very oblivious. You need to wake up and smell the coffee, or maybe at this event, smell the weed, man. I got off topic, but I'm trying to prove a point that drugs are becoming way too lenient in our society. And that goes for us wanting to establish safe injection sites. So now it's okay for these dope fiends to gather around in this one area in the neighborhood and shoot up for hours at a time, how many times a day they want to, and get help if they OD? My blood pressure's getting high, and we need to take a quick break right now. I promise we're gonna get back to the history, and we're gonna take it all the way back to the 1800s, and I'm going to remind you all of something that happened in our world that was very similar to what's going on now, along with more pros and cons about safe injection sites. You've been listening to WCRN Weekends with Pat Rice on AM 830. And we continue. On our last segment, I went down the list about some harm reduction programs, explained what they are and what they do, before I kind of went off track discussing about, is our society too lenient on drug use, and gave out quite a few examples. And do I think these harm reduction programs promote drug use? Yes, in a way I do. But let me touch up a little bit about some history so you guys can understand how and where these safe injection sites originally started, and then I'm going to take it back to the 1800s and remind you of something in which I think many of us may be forgetting about what happened. And it's quite similar to what's happening today. Did you know that the Netherlands was the first country to establish the first staffed injection room, though it didn't receive legal support until the mid-90s, 1996 to be exact. And then Bern, Switzerland was the first legal center to inject drugs, which opened back in 1986. Now, that might seem as a different story for the US, as there's really no official supervised injection site yet until San Francisco recently in late 2017 and now 2018 has opened up a site for heroin addicts to stop by and inject their dope. Though not everyone on the West Coast is cool with that idea, because the senator of the state of Washington actually proposed a bill to ban supervised injection sites within his state, Washington. And you know what? I don't blame him. But it seems like the odds can be against us, because there are many organizations and people that do support the movement of safe injection sites throughout the country. They believe that it will help put a stop to heroin, aka diamorphine, which is usually injected, can be smoked, snorted, or inhaled. It has rapid effects that could last for a few hours. It causes respiratory depression, dry mouth, euphoria, and the obvious one, addiction. It was originally first made by C.R. Alder Wright in 1874 from morphine, derived from the opium poppy plant. And did you know that Afghanistan produced 66% of the world's opium in 2015? And withdrawal can begin within 6 to 24 hours after use of the drug. And the median lethal overdose for lightweight 75 mgs are 600 mgs for those truly hardcore addicts. And let me tell you, you gotta up your dose very quickly soon after when you start, because the drug is that powerful. The drug is so powerful that some people call it the devil. But are safe injection sites the answer? Because did you know, or did you forget, that back in the 1800s, there was a thing called opium dens within China, New York City Chinatown, San Francisco's Chinatown, worldwide. It was a place where opium could be sold and smoked. So this is basically like a safe injection site. You go to this so-called area, aka a den, some joint, and you shoot up your drugs. You smoke your drugs, man. The only thing different is we're not selling it nowadays. And we got nurses for your protection and safety. But back in the day with opium dens, you had like waitresses. You had these pretty young things, like Michael Jackson would call it, coming up to your need. Oh, hello, sir. Do you need some more opium? Yeah, baby. Get me a 20 bag and let me snort this real quick. These opium dens were so prevalent in China. Like, China had such a bad problem with opium that it actually became pretty much a law that if you saw someone doing opium, aka heroin, in public, people had the right to kill you right on the spot. And it goes back to that saying that originated back in the day with the mob, kill your local neighborhood heroin dealer. And that's kind of exactly what they did. But they weren't just killing dealers, they were killing users. Now my question is this what it's going to come down to over here in the US now? And I don't think people who do heroin, hard drugs, even soft drugs, whatever you want to call it, are bad people. And I believe that they don't deserve to have their lives taken because of it. They need rehab. They need help. And in my complete, honest opinion, I don't think safe injection sites are the place that will make that happen. To be honest, I think it's going to influence junkies to use more. That's like a bar to an alcoholic. Safe injection sites is like a bar to a heroin addict. Oh, this is a place I can go 24/7 and shoot up, or whenever the opening hours are, 9 to 5. Wow, this is great. I'll sit there for 5 hours straight, nodding in and out, shoot up when I wake up. I'll shoot up until they tell me, hey man, I'm sorry, but you need to leave. And the best thing about it is that they don't even need to leave a tip. The taxpayers are going to pay for this. I'll just come back tomorrow. But then again, I'll run into my local connect outside of the place. Because, just like sharks in a swimming pool full of blood, they're going to be circling around that safe injection site. Oh, I know some junkie's going to come out of there any minute, man. And I'll be able to sell him a bag like that. And I got some other stuff on me I need to get rid of so I can re-up from Jose. This is going to be a big gold mine. And it's going to be like cat and mouse with the drug dealers and the cops. I could call it like that. And let me get into some of the pros and the cons. First, I'll do the pros because I know there's some people that are probably really mad at me right now. Okay, so safe injection sites seem to work for Sydney, Australia. They claim that it managed 3,426 overdoses with not one fatality. But my question is, did it decrease heroin use? Did it decrease addiction? My answer is probably not. And then Vancouver safe injection sites claim to have managed 336 overdoses in 2007 with no fatalities. But then I ask myself, did it decrease heroin use? Did it decrease addiction? My answer probably is nope. And listen to this. Vancouver even claims that their downtown east side safe injection site had seen more heroin, cocaine, crystal meth, more consumption of illegal drugs, overdoses, drug deals on the streets, and deaths. But if you want to hear some good news, within the U.S., in New England, deaths by opiate overdoses fell 8.3% in 2017 compared to 2016 in the Commonwealth. 2016 had 2,155 deaths. 2017 had an estimated 1,977 deaths. And for a quick trivia fact, for some, it took up to 14 doses of naloxone for them to survive from an overdose. That is heart-wrenching. That is disgusting. But hey, some people say safe injection sites help the pollution of dirty needles that be thrown out on the streets or out on playgrounds where children play. But does that really counteract the influence of the stigma that it's alright to shoot up and do drugs? These sites influence drug use. It creates a safe place. It creates a safe place for addicts. It ends up creating more crime, open drug trade, which leads into violence, turns a decent neighborhood into a ghetto. Do you want your neighborhood to turn into a ghetto just because a safe injection site moved into town? I don't think so. And then it continues to put money into drug dealers' pockets because addicts continuing their addiction means more heroin is being sold out on the streets. This has been another episode of WCRN Weekends with Pat Rice on AM 830.